The letter that stopped the laughter. The studio lights were warm that night, painting the stage in soft gold. Laughter rolled across the audience like a gentle wave. Jimmy Fallon's voice carried its usual energy, quick and playful, filled with charm that made millions smile every evening. Keanu Reeves sat across from him, calm and grounded, wearing that quiet half-smile that always seemed to hold both peace and pain. Everyone expected another light-hearted interview. Stories about his latest movie, a few jokes, maybe a funny behind-the-scenes moment. But behind Keanu's composed face, something deeper moved. He kept his hands folded in his lap, fingers brushing a folded envelope hidden in his jacket pocket. That letter had waited for years to be read, and tonight, under the blinding lights, he knew it was time. Jimmy leaned forward, unaware of what was about to unfold. "Man, Keanu, people always say you're one of the kindest guys in Hollywood," he said with a grin. "Is that true? Are you secretly a saint or what?" The audience laughed. Keanu smiled politely, but his eyes didn't follow. They looked distant, as if seeing someone who wasn't there anymore. He inhaled slowly, then said, "Kindness isn't something you show. It's something that keeps you alive." For a moment, the room fell silent. Jimmy blinked, unsure how to respond. The tone had shifted. It wasn't a joke. It was something heavier. Keanu adjusted the microphone in front of him and reached into his jacket. He took out the old envelope, the corners soft from years of carrying it. The air in the room changed, subtle but noticeable. Even the laughter in the audience began to fade. "I wasn't planning to do this," Keanu said quietly, "but I think I need to." Jimmy straightened. Is that a letter?" Keanu nodded. "It's a letter someone wrote to me a long time ago. I never read it publicly. Until now." The crowd leaned forward, curiosity replacing laughter. Every camera focused closer. Keanu unfolded the paper slowly, like someone opening a door to a memory he wasn't ready to face. His voice, when he began to read, trembled just slightly, just enough to reveal the emotion underneath. "Dear Keanu," he began, "I don't know if this letter will ever reach you, but I wanted you to know something. People see the man who saves others on screen, but I saw the man who saved me in real life." The audience grew still. Jimmy watched, eyebrows raised, the usual rhythm of the show gone completely. Keanu continued reading. "I met you once, years ago, on a rainy day when I was lost in every sense of the word. I didn't have a home. I didn't have a reason to wake up the next morning. You didn't know me, yet you stopped. You gave me your umbrella, and for some reason, that moment reminded me that good still existed in this world." His hands tightened slightly around the paper. The words shook more as he read the next lines. "You said, 'The rain will stop soon, just hold on.' Those words became my reason to hold on. I went home that night and decided not to end my life." A hush spread through the room. Jimmy's jaw dropped slightly. The crew members standing behind the cameras exchanged glances, realizing this was no ordinary talk show moment. Keanu paused, eyes glistening under the stage lights. He exhaled, the sound breaking the silence like a sigh from years ago finally escaping. "This letter," he said softly, "was from a woman named Elena. She passed away 2 years later, but she sent this before she did." Jimmy swallowed hard. You saved her life?" Keanu shook his head gently. "No, I just gave her a few seconds of kindness. The rest was her strength." The audience erupted in quiet applause, emotional, respectful. Jimmy looked overwhelmed, but moved. Keanu smiled faintly and placed the letter on the table. We never know what someone carries in their heart. One small act might be the only light they see. Then, as if remembering something painful, his expression changed. His gaze drifted toward the crowd, unfocused. "But sometimes," he whispered, "you find out too late that you could have done more." Jimmy leaned forward, his voice soft now. "What do you mean?" Keanu hesitated. His jaw tensed. "She wasn't the only one I failed to save." And before Jimmy or anyone else could speak, Keanu stood up slowly. He looked at the letter again, then at the cameras, then at the audience who were still frozen in silence. He said quietly, "Some stories don't end where people think they do." And with that, Keanu walked off the stage. No music played. No laughter followed. Only silence. The producers didn't cut to commercial right away. The crowd sat stunned, unsure whether it was part of the show or something far more real. Jimmy looked toward the side of the stage where Keanu had disappeared, his face pale and speechless. For the first time in years, the man known for laughter had no words. The next morning, the world would wake up to headlines, but none of them would know what that letter truly meant, or who else Keanu was talking about. And somewhere, in a quiet apartment in Los Angeles, another sealed envelope waited, addressed to him, never opened, marked only with 3 words, "For when you're ready." The silence after the stage, the night after the show, Los Angeles felt unusually quiet. The city that never truly slept had dimmed its lights just a little, as if holding its breath. In his small home in the hills, Keanu sat by the window, the reflection of the city glowing faintly across the glass. The letter still rested on the table beside him, folded neatly, though the edges now carried faint marks from his trembling hands. His phone buzzed endlessly. Producers, agents, journalists, all wanted to know why he had walked off stage. There were messages from friends, from fans, and even from strangers saying how deeply the moment had touched them. Some called it powerful, others called it strange. But Keanu didn't answer any of them. He stared at the second envelope, the one with the simple words written in faded ink, "For when you're ready." It had been sent almost a year after Elena's death. It had arrived quietly, with no return address, just like the first. He had never opened it. Back then, he thought it was better to leave some things untouched, some truths unknown. But after last night, the silence in his heart felt heavier. As dawn crept in, Keanu finally reached for the envelope. His hand stopped halfway. Instead, he leaned back, closing his eyes. Memories began to rise, memories he had buried deep. He saw himself years ago, standing outside a small hospital room. Elena had been inside, thin and weak, yet smiling when she saw him. He remembered the smell of disinfectant, the faint hum of machines, and her voice when she whispered, "You saved me once, but you can't save me forever." He had promised to visit again, but the film schedule had stretched longer than expected. By the time he returned, she was gone. The nurses told him she had left something for him, a letter. This one, and for years he had carried it, afraid to know what it said. His mind returned to the show, the faces, the silence, Jimmy's eyes full of questions. He hadn't planned to read it there. But when Jimmy had mentioned kindness, something had broken open inside him. That stage, filled with laughter and lights, had suddenly turned into a mirror he could no longer avoid. His phone buzzed again. This time, the name on the screen made his heart skip. Sandra B. He hesitated before answering. Her voice came soft, almost a whisper. "Hey, are you okay?" He tried to sound calm. "I'm fine," she paused. "No, you're not. I saw the clip. It was everywhere. People are talking, Keanu. What happened out there?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know. Maybe it was time to stop pretending everything's okay." There was silence on the other end. Then she said gently, "You've been carrying that for too long." "Maybe," he said quietly. "But there's something else." "Another letter? From her?" "Yes," her voice softened. "Do you want to read it together?" He looked at the window again, the morning light now brushing against the city skyline. "Maybe. I think I need to." Later that afternoon, they met at a small cafe they both used to visit when filming together years ago. It was quiet, hidden from the usual noise of Los Angeles. Sandra arrived in a simple gray sweater, sunglasses covering her tired eyes. When she saw him, she smiled softly but with concern. "You look like you haven't slept," she said. "I haven't." He placed the envelope on the table. She stared at it for a long moment. "It's strange," she murmured. "Sometimes the things we avoid the most are the ones meant to heal us." He nodded, not answering. The waiter brought them coffee, and for a few moments they sat in silence, the kind that only 2 old friends could share. Finally, she said, "Whenever you're ready." He opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded twice. The handwriting was delicate, fading slightly. He unfolded it slowly, his breath uneven. "Dear Keanu," the letter began, "if you are reading this, then you found the courage I always admired in you. Thank you for that day in the rain, but I want you to know something that might change how you see kindness. His eyes moved across the words, and his pulse quickened. The day you helped me wasn't the first time I saw you. Months before that, I used to watch you in the park where I slept. You gave food to a man there every night. You probably don't remember him. His name was David. He was my brother. David. He was my brother. Keanu's hands froze. He felt the blood drain from his face. You never knew it, but the kindness you gave him saved both of us. He told me, "This man reminds me that people still care." When he passed away, I promised myself that if I ever saw you, I'd tell you how much you meant to him. Sandra reached across the table, her eyes full of quiet empathy. "Keep reading," she whispered. Keanu continued. "Sometimes life doesn't give us second chances to thank the people who changed us. So if you ever wonder whether what you do matters, remember that you gave my brother peace before the end, and you gave me hope to live a little longer." His hands trembled. The words blurred. He closed his eyes for a moment, inhaling slowly, trying to steady himself. "She knew about him," he whispered. "About who?" Sandra asked softly. Keanu looked up, eyes moist. "About the man I used to sit with every night. He was homeless. I never knew his name. I just called him friend." Sandra blinked. "That was her brother?" He nodded, voice breaking. "I didn't know until now." The cafe was silent. Outside, the afternoon light shifted gently through the trees. People walked by, unaware that inside, two souls were remembering strangers who had once shared kindness in the dark. Keanu folded the letter again, his expression filled with both pain and peace. She carried that memory for years. "And I didn't even realize." Sandra placed her hand over his. "You don't need to fix the past, Keanu. You just need to forgive it." He looked down at their hands, then back at the folded paper. "I thought I was done losing people, but it feels like I keep meeting ghosts who remind me how fragile kindness is." She smiled sadly. "Maybe they're not ghosts. Maybe they're reminders that you've lived deeply." He looked at her for a long moment, seeing something familiar in her eyes, someone who understood silence, loss, and the weight of empathy. Then, in a quiet voice, she said, "What if Elena wasn't the only one who wanted you to read this?" "What do you mean?" "Look at the back of the letter," she whispered. He turned it over. Written faintly in pencil were three small words that hadn't been there before, or maybe he had never noticed them. "Someone else knows." Someone else knows. The words, "someone else knows," echoed in Keanu's mind long after he left the cafe. He carried the folded letter in his hand, unable to look at it again. Every line, every phrase replayed in fragments, each one pulling him closer to something he didn't yet understand. Sandra followed him outside. The late afternoon light had turned golden, painting the street with warmth that didn't reach their hearts. She could tell by his silence that he was drifting somewhere far away in thought. "Who do you think it is?" she asked softly. "I don't know," he said. "But whoever wrote that line wanted me to find out. Maybe it's connected to Elena or her brother. Maybe someone who saw it all happen." She nodded thoughtfully. "Or maybe someone who wants you to remember something you've forgotten." They walked for a while without speaking, the quiet between them filled with unspoken emotions. Later that evening, Keanu went home and sat by the same window as before. He placed both letters on the table side by side. One was worn with time. The other felt alive with unanswered questions. Beside them, his phone vibrated with notifications, clips of last night's show flooding social media. The video of him walking off stage had gone viral. Millions were watching his silence. The comments were everywhere. Some said it was staged. Others said it was real. Some felt moved, others confused. But among all the noise, one message caught his attention. It was from an unknown email. No subject line. Just a single sentence. "You shouldn't have read it on television. She wanted that story to stay between the three of you." His heart skipped. He read it again. "The three of you." He froze, staring at the words. It was a confirmation. There really was someone else. He immediately forwarded the email to Sandra. Within minutes, she called. "Keanu, that's not a coincidence," she said. "The timing, the message, it's connected." "But how did they get your private address?" "I don't know," he said quietly. "This email isn't public. Only a few people have it. Then it's someone who knew her. Someone who still watches you. The idea felt unsettling. For the first time, Keanu felt something like fear. Not for himself, but for what truth might be waiting behind those words. He looked at the letter again. Someone else knows, he whispered to himself. Who are you? The next day, Sandra showed up at his house. She carried a small notebook and a tablet. I couldn't stop thinking about it, she said. So I looked for Elena's old records. There's not much online, but I found a name, David Roberts. Her brother. The man from the park, Keanu said quietly. Yes, she nodded. He volunteered at a community shelter before he passed. There's one near downtown that still has his name on a donor wall. I thought maybe someone there could know something. They drove downtown that afternoon. The shelter was small but welcoming, with faded murals of people holding hands painted along the outside walls. Inside, the air smelled like coffee and warm bread. A few volunteers were sorting clothes and handing out food. An older woman behind the counter smiled when they entered. Can I help you? Keanu hesitated before answering. We're looking for someone who might have known David Roberts. Her smile faded slightly. David. Yes, I remember him. Kind soul. Used to play guitar out back. Always talked about hope. Do you know if he had any friends here? Sandra asked. The woman nodded. One man used to visit him often. Called himself Leo. Said David helped him get clean. They were like brothers. But after David passed, Leo disappeared. Keanu felt something tighten in his chest. Do you know where he went? No, she said. But he left a note here once. We found it when cleaning out David's locker. She disappeared into a small office and returned with an old box. From it, she pulled out a crumpled envelope. She handed it to Keanu. His hands shook as he opened it. Inside was a folded piece of paper with a simple line written in pencil. Thank you, stranger in the rain. You gave him peace, and you gave me purpose. Beneath that was a signature. Leo R. Sandra looked over his shoulder. This can't be a coincidence, she said. Leo knew both of them. And he called you the stranger in the rain. That means he saw what happened. Keanu nodded slowly, realization dawning. He must be the one who sent that message. He's the one who knows. The woman behind the counter hesitated. Wait, are you Keanu Reeves? He gave a small smile. Yes, ma'am. Her expression softened. Then maybe I can help more. Last month, a man came here asking if we still had David's letters. Said his name was Leo, too. Older now, gray hair, quiet voice. He said he was trying to find you. Me? Keanu asked. Yes. He left a note for you, but I didn't think it was real. I still have it. She went back to the office again, returning with another envelope. This one had no name. Just a single sentence on the front. You still owe him a song. Keanu's breath caught. He felt his throat close. Sandra looked confused. A song? He nodded slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. When I used to visit David, he always played the same melody on his guitar. One day, I promised I'd learn it and play it back for him. I never did. Sandra touched his shoulder gently. Maybe that's why Leo's trying to find you. Maybe he wants you to finish what you started. Keanu folded the note carefully, his eyes wet but determined. Then I'll find him. Where do we start? She asked. With the park, he said. Where it all began. That night, they went back to the old park, the same place where years ago Keanu had shared an umbrella with a stranger. It was quiet now, the benches worn, the air cool with the scent of rain. As they walked toward the center of the park, Keanu stopped. On one of the benches sat an old acoustic guitar, its strings worn, but its shape still beautiful under the moonlight. A folded paper rested on the seat. He picked it up slowly. On it were the words, "If you're reading this, you found what you left behind. Meet me where the rain begins." Where the rain begins? The sky was gray when Keanu arrived at the park. Clouds drifted low, heavy and silent, as if the world itself was waiting for something to break. The wind carried the faint smell of wet earth. He pulled his jacket tighter, the same jacket he had worn years ago when he first met David. The place looked smaller than he remembered. Time had faded the benches, erased the footprints, and replaced the faces. But somewhere deep inside, he could still feel the echoes, the laughter, the rain, the quiet conversations that once meant everything to two strangers. Sandra walked beside him, her steps slow, her eyes watching his face more than the path. She knew he wasn't just walking through a park. He was walking through memories. They reached the old oak tree near the pond, the same spot where David used to sit with his guitar. Keanu stopped there, staring at the bench where the message had been left the night before. The guitar was gone now, taken by whoever had placed it there, but in its place lay a single black umbrella, folded neatly. He picked it up, and the moment his fingers touched the handle, a light drizzle began to fall. Sandra looked up at the sky. "It's like someone planned this." Keanu smiled faintly, though his eyes carried sadness. Or maybe the world remembers. As the rain grew stronger, a faint sound drifted from the far end of the park. A guitar, old but steady, playing a tune he hadn't heard in years. Keanu froze. "That melody," Sandra whispered. "It's the one David used to play, isn't it?" He nodded. "Yes." They followed the sound, crossing the small bridge over the pond until they reached a stone gazebo partly covered in ivy. Inside, sitting on a wooden chair, was an older man with gray hair and calm eyes. The guitar rested against his knee. He looked up as they approached. His face was worn but peaceful. "You found it," the man said softly. "Are you Leo?" Keanu asked. The man smiled gently. "I was once. Now I'm just someone who remembers." Keanu stepped closer, the rain dripping from his hair. "How did you know about me?" "About Elena?" Leo placed the guitar down and looked at him carefully. "Because I was there the night you gave her that umbrella. I was sitting on the other side of the street. I watched you stop for her when no one else did. She came back to the shelter that night crying, not because of pain, but because someone had finally seen her." Keanu's chest tightened. "I didn't know anyone was watching," Leo nodded. "People always think kindness goes unseen. But the truth is, someone is always watching. David saw you first, then Elena. And when they were both gone, I became the last one left to remember what you did." Sandra stepped forward. "Did you send those letters?" "No," Leo said quietly. "Elena wrote them. But I delivered the second one after she passed. She asked me to. She told me to give it to him." He looked at Keanu. "Only when he was ready." "So why did you reach out now?" Keanu asked. Leo sighed deeply, looking at the rain falling through the open sides of the gazebo. "Because I didn't think you ever would be. But when I saw you on that show, reading her letter in front of the world, I realized you finally were, even if it hurt you." Keanu sat down slowly on the bench beside him. The sound of the rain filled the silence between them. Leo continued. "You think you failed them, don't you?" Keanu looked at him. "I should have done more. I should have visited her again. I should have—" His voice broke. "I just keep losing people." Leo's expression softened. "You didn't lose them. They just changed form. People like Elena and David, they don't disappear. They become the lessons we carry. And you've been carrying them your whole life." Sandra placed her hand on Keanu's shoulder, silent support in her touch. Leo reached into his coat and took out a small notebook. "Before Elena died, she asked me to give this to you. She said it wasn't a goodbye. It was a reminder." Keanu took the notebook carefully. The cover was soft, worn with time. He opened the first page. In her familiar handwriting were 4 simple words. "When you play, listen." Beneath it, a faint sketch of a man holding a guitar under the rain. He turned the next page. It was filled with small notes, lines from conversations they had shared, small things she remembered, pieces of her brother's songs. And on the last page, written in trembling ink, were the words, "You once told me the rain always stops eventually, but maybe it never has to, if we learn to dance in it." Keanu stared at the page for a long time, unable to speak. The rain outside grew heavier, drumming against the roof. "She wrote that during her last week," Leo said softly. "She told me if you ever felt lost again, you should come here, to where it all began. And when the rain starts, that's when you play." Keanu looked up slowly, his eyes meeting Leo's. "And what happens then?" Leo smiled faintly. "You'll know." Sandra handed him the guitar. He hesitated, then took it. His fingers brushed the strings gently, uncertain at first. Then he began to play, the same melody he once promised David. The notes were soft, imperfect, but full of soul. As the sound echoed through the rain, something changed in the air. The sadness that had lived inside him for years began to shift, slowly, quietly, into something lighter. Sandra closed her eyes, listening. Leo watched with a faint smile. When the last note faded, Keanu sat still, his fingers trembling. Tears rolled silently down his cheeks. Leo stood, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Now you've done what you owed him." "And her?" Keanu whispered. "And you?" Leo smiled. "I owed you this moment." They stood there in silence, rain falling softly around them. After a few minutes, Keanu looked at him and asked, "Will I see you again?" Leo shook his head gently. "No, my friend. My part in this story is done." He turned and began to walk away, disappearing slowly into the curtain of rain. Keanu watched until he was gone, unsure if what he had just witnessed was real or something spiritual. Sandra spoke softly beside him. "What if he wasn't really there?" Keanu didn't answer. He just looked at the spot where Leo had vanished. The rain had stopped, and in the distance, sunlight broke through the clouds, painting the wet ground in gold, and on the bench beside him, where the umbrella had been, there was now only a folded piece of paper. He opened it. The rain begins where the heart forgives. The echo of forgiveness. The next morning, Keanu woke to the sound of rain again, gentle, rhythmic, and strangely peaceful. He opened his eyes slowly, half expecting to find the park around him, but it was only his quiet home, still, dim, and calm. For the first time in years, he felt rested. The letter, the guitar, and the umbrella now lay on his table, side by side like sacred relics from another life. He touched them carefully, as if afraid they would vanish if he blinked too long. Sandra had stayed the night in the guest room. She came into the kitchen, her hair slightly messy, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You didn't sleep much, did you?" she asked gently. "Enough," he said. "It's strange. I feel like something inside me finally stopped running." She smiled faintly. "That's what forgiveness does. Even when it doesn't fix everything, it makes the silence softer." They sat quietly, drinking their coffee, both lost in thought. The events of the previous day lingered in the air like a dream. Sandra broke the silence. "Do you think Leo was real?" Keanu hesitated. "I don't know. Maybe he was. Maybe he wasn't. But what he said felt real." She nodded. "Sometimes the people we need the most come only when we're ready to listen." He looked out the window at the rain. He said the rain begins where the heart forgives. Maybe that's what this was about. Not saving others, but forgiving myself for not being able to save everyone. There was a softness in his voice that Sandra hadn't heard in years. But later that day, something unexpected arrived that broke that calm. His phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. No name, no photo. Just one sentence, "You finally played the song." She heard it. He stared at the screen. A chill ran through him. "Sandra," he said quietly. "Look at this." She leaned over his shoulder. "That's the same tone as the email before." "Leo?" "It can't be," he whispered. "He said I wouldn't see him again." "Maybe he meant in person," she said softly. The message was followed by another. "You were never supposed to carry her pain alone." He exhaled slowly. "There's more to this. Something we still don't know." He scrolled further. There was one last message. "Go back to the stage." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The rain outside had stopped, and in the silence that followed, the words felt like a command from somewhere unseen. By evening, they drove to the same studio where the interview had taken place. The producers had already reached out multiple times asking if he wanted to address what happened on the show. This time, he agreed. When they arrived, the crew greeted him cautiously. The video of him walking off stage had become one of the most watched clips on the internet. The world was divided. Some thought it was performance art. Others called it the most genuine moment on live television in years. Jimmy Fallon himself came out to meet him. His usual bright energy was replaced by something quieter. "Hey, man," he said softly. "I didn't know what to say that night." "I've never seen anything like that." "You didn't need to," Keanu replied gently. "Some things are meant to be silent." Jimmy nodded slowly. "Are you okay?" Keanu hesitated. I'm learning to be. As they walked through the empty set, Keanu stopped by the very spot where he had sat that night. The table was gone, replaced by cables and cameras, but the air still felt charged with something invisible. He looked at the floor, remembering how the laughter had died, how the silence had taken over, how his voice had trembled reading Elena's words. Sandra watched him quietly from the side. This place felt heavy that night, he said softly. But now it feels like it's waiting. Waiting for what? She asked. He looked up. For me to finish what I started. He sat down in the same chair and took a deep breath. Then, from his jacket, he pulled out the small notebook Elena had written. He flipped to the last page and noticed something he hadn't seen before. A faint mark near the bottom corner, almost invisible ink. He tilted the page under the studio light, and slowly letters began to appear. It read, "When the song ends, listen to what remains." His pulse quickened. He looked up at the sound technician who was still checking microphones. "Can you turn everything on for a minute?" The man nodded. Sure. The lights came up, the mics went live. The stage once again looked like it was ready for the show. Keanu picked up the guitar he had brought and began to play the same melody again, softly, with trembling fingers. Each note echoed through the empty studio, bouncing off the walls, filling the space that once held laughter with something pure and sacred. When the last note faded, there was a moment of perfect stillness. Then, through the speakers came a faint sound, barely there, like static or a whisper. Sandra frowned. "Did you hear that?" The sound technician looked confused. "There's nothing on the feed. All mics are clean." But Keanu heard it clearly, a voice soft as rain saying, "Thank you." He froze, tears welling up. Sandra stepped closer, sensing the shift in his breathing. "What is it?" he whispered. "It's her, Elena. She said thank you." The technician looked up, startled. "Sir, no one said anything in the studio." Keanu smiled faintly through tears. "I know." For a long moment, no one moved. The room felt weightless, as if the world had paused to listen. Sandra placed her hand gently on his shoulder. "Maybe the rain never stopped after all." He nodded slowly. "No, it just changed places." As they left the studio, Keanu turned back one last time. The lights dimmed automatically, one by one, until only a single spotlight remained, falling on the chair where he had sat. In that light, the faint shape of a folded paper could be seen resting on the table. He walked back slowly and picked it up. Written in delicate handwriting were 3 final words. "You are free." The light that stays the next morning, sunlight entered through the window like a quiet invitation. For the first time in weeks, Keanu felt peace instead of weight. There were no more letters to read, no more ghosts to chase, no more guilt whispering in the dark. The air in his home felt lighter, as if something unseen had finally been lifted away. He brewed coffee slowly, watching the steam rise. Sandra sat across the table, silent, her eyes tracing the soft lines on his face. She had seen him broken before, quiet before, lost before, but never like this. This silence was not emptiness. It was acceptance. "You heard her, didn't you?" she asked softly. He nodded. "Yes, but not with my ears." It was something else, like a memory becoming real. She smiled faintly. Then it was real enough. They sat there, sharing coffee and quiet, both understanding that some moments don't need to be explained. They just need to be felt. But a few hours later, as he was preparing to leave for a film shoot, another envelope appeared at his doorstep. Plain white and unsigned. No name, no address, just his name in clean, familiar handwriting. He hesitated before opening it. Inside was a single note. "Every soul you touched led you here." This was never about loss. It was about remembering the light that stays. Beneath the words was a photo, old, slightly faded. It showed Elena, David, and a younger man with them, sitting under a tree, smiling at the camera. Keanu froze. The third man was Leo. He turned the photo over. On the back was written, "This was taken by your mother's foundation the year before she passed. Kindness has been your inheritance all along." His hands trembled. The pieces began to fit together. Sandra looked over his shoulder. Your mother's foundation? You mean the one that supported shelters years ago? He nodded slowly. Yes. She donated to dozens of places, including this one. She must have met them. David, Elena, maybe even Leo. Maybe that's why they knew my name before I ever knew theirs. Sandra stared at the photo, realization dawning. They weren't strangers, Keanu. They were part of the same kindness that started long before you ever gave Elena that umbrella. It's like the circle was already complete. You just didn't know you were standing in it. He sat down, overwhelmed, his eyes glistening. So all this time, it wasn't random. No, she said softly. It was connected through every act of love your mother began, and you continued without even knowing it. He closed his eyes. The sound of rain seemed to echo in his mind again. Not the storm that once symbolized sorrow, but a gentle rhythm that felt like life itself. In that quiet moment, everything made sense. The letter, the park, Leo's words, Elena's voice, even the mysterious emails. None of them were signs of haunting. They were echoes of gratitude, carried forward by kindness that refused to die. You are free, the last note had said. And now, for the first time, he understood what it truly meant. A week later, Keanu returned to The Tonight Show. Jimmy Fallon greeted him with the same warmth, but this time there was something unspoken between them, a mutual respect that went beyond performance. As the cameras rolled, Jimmy smiled. Last time you were here, you left us all speechless. Do you want to talk about what happened? Keanu smiled gently. Not really talk. Maybe just share what I learned. The audience grew quiet. Even the crew leaned in. We all carry moments that change us, he said slowly. Sometimes they come as kindness, sometimes as pain. But every act of love, no matter how small, leaves a mark that outlives us. When you help someone, you're not saving them. You're reminding them that life is still worth staying for. And when you forgive yourself, you remember that you are too. Jimmy nodded, eyes glistening. The crowd stayed silent, moved beyond words. Keanu reached into his jacket and placed Elena's letter on the desk. This letter reminded me that kindness never really ends. It travels, from one person to another, like music, like rain. And just as he said it, a soft sound began to play through the studio speakers. The same melody from the park, gentle and haunting. No one had planned it. No one knew where it came from. Jimmy looked around in surprise. Is that... Keanu smiled, looking up toward the studio lights. Yes, that's them. The audience fell silent again. No one moved. When the song ended, he stood up, bowed slightly, and said, Thank you for listening. The crowd rose to their feet, not cheering loudly, but clapping softly, the kind of applause that comes from the heart. As he left the stage this time, he didn't walk away in pain. He walked away lighter, freer, carrying no ghosts, only gratitude. Sandra waited for him backstage. She smiled warmly. You did it. He looked at her with calm eyes. No, he said softly. We did, she nodded. What now? He glanced back toward the stage where the lights were dimming. Now, I live the rest of the song. That night, when he returned home, he placed the guitar near the window, next to the umbrella and the notebook. Outside, the rain began again, soft, endless, forgiving. And as he closed his eyes, he thought of every soul he had met. His mother, David, Elena, Leo, Sandra, each one a drop in the same rain. Each one reminding him that the light we share never fades. It only changes form. And somewhere, far beyond the sound of the city, a gentle voice whispered again, The rain has stopped, but the kindness remains.